So have you guys been able to kind of look and play around
On
with?
the carousel, or
Yeah.
just a very little bit. Randy put in a couple of slides on our TV so that people will know that we will be back soon. But not too much playing around. I didn't want to mess things up.
Yeah, not a problem. So, yeah, so we can kind of get going, kind of take a look. So, if you guys have any familiarity with PowerPoint or Keynote or anything like that, you will have absolutely no problem picking this up and kind of getting used to how Carousel kind of works in the kind of day-to-day operation with it here. So what we're kind of looking at is we'll just kind of give you guys a brief overview of what's going on and how our software works, and then we'll just kind of dive right in. You guys, just like last week, if you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to stop and ask any of those questions. We'll definitely try to get you guys up to speed as quickly as we can.
Okay.
So what you guys are seeing here is what we call our Carousel channel. So this is what is being displayed as your bulletin board between programming. So this is what will show up between all your scheduled shows for it. And we call it a channel. Now that channel, where's our refresh button? There we go. If I refresh this, you'll see that it kind of loads in little sections in there. Now each one of these sections are what we call a zone. And inside that zone is basically just an allocated space for specific messages. Excuse me. So in here we've got specific areas that are kind of broken out. Like right up here we've kind of got this big area that's got our local weather. Down here it looks like we've got a website. Over in our bottom right we've got some other information in there. And inside those zones, we have what are called bulletins. And bulletins are just the messages that are going to be displayed that just rotate through to show what you can have. Because you can have multiple bulletins within a single zone. And they just kind of rotate through and kind of go through that whole process there. So just to kind of recap, the whole presentation is what we call a carousel channel. That channel is then broken up into zones. And inside those zones, you have individual bulletins. Now, it's kind of important to understand kind of the way that it works and how it's all broken down with our display, because how we work within our software is we work on the zone level. So there isn't like a one big giant community library of bulletins that you just kind of build and then point in different directions or with your media or anything. You're actually creating the messages within the zone that you want. So it's real important because we're working on a zone by zone level. To navigate between zones, it's real easy. Right up here, it's going to tell you what zone you're currently in. And so in this case, we're in the My First Channel Video and Messages zone. Now, if I wanted to switch to a different zone, all I need to do is click on that. And over here on our right-hand side, it's going to list all the zones that we have access and are available for us. So right now, we're in the Video and Messages zone, which is in that top center zone right here. If I wanted to go to one of our other zones in the bottom corners, we have our news or our social media. It's real easy just to click on those zones. And then it'll tell you what zone. We can create messages and be able to build or manage or do whatever we need to within that zone. So it's real important to make sure you're in the right zone before you start working. Otherwise, you're going to start building something and it's going to end up in a different area that you don't want it to be. So for today, we're just going to kind of work in our video and messages zone for right now. So we're going to create a bulletin. Real easy. Click on New Bulletin here. And it's going to give us 3 options of bulletins that we can create. I'll kind of explain each one of these, and then we'll do a demonstration. We'll actually make some of these and give examples. So the 3 types of bulletins that we have are over here. We have templates, uploaded, and dynamic. Template bulletins are the ones that you create within our software. So you have a starting point, you have a template that you're going to start working from, where you're going to add in your own text, add in your own pictures, be able to design it, change font, colors, do whatever you want. You're actually using a template as a starting point or a building block, and you're building it within our software. Now, uploaded bulletins are bulletins that you create outside of our software. Whether you're using Photoshop or you're creating something in PowerPoint and you have just a self-contained image file that then you upload and fill it up or create a bulletin doing that way, where you're not going to be editing any of the text or anything like that. You just basically upload it as a self-contained bulletin into the system and have it rotate through. Now, with uploaded bulletins, there are some restrictions to it. There is a minimum file size for anything that you upload, and it's a 1 gigabyte in file size. For images, any of your standard image formats are going to be accepted. So JPEGs, PNGs, TIFFs, things like that. PDFs are not an accepted file format, so if you have a flyer that you get from the Rotary Club or something for their pancake breakfast or something like that, you're going to need to convert that to a JPEG and then upload it if you want to do it that way. And we'll talk about uploaded bulletins here in a little bit. The last type of bulletins that we have are your dynamic bulletins. And dynamic bulletins are bulletins that you create, but what you're doing is you're pointing them to an outside source. And once they're pointed at that outside source, then you'll be able to upload and it will create the bulletins automatically for you. So things like RSS feeds or social media like Facebook and Twitter, or even your cablecast schedule, where it'll automatically publish your schedule of what's on your channel or coming up next, things like that. And those will continually update dynamically, so you're always going to have fresh new content in those types of bulletins. You don't have to recreate them. You just make them once, and they'll continually update automatically for you.
Okay.
So we'll give some examples of those here in a little bit.
Okay, what is RSS? What does that stand for?
RSS stands for Real Simple Syndication. So what that is a lot of news stations or news websites like CNN, Headline News, whatever it may be, you can subscribe to an RSS feed, and what it will do is it's basically just a feed for articles from headlines or whatever it may be. It's just a way to be able to congregate articles that you can kind of sort through and watch or look at, basically.
Okay.
And I can kind of show you kind of an example of something like that when we get to dynamic bulletins. So we'll start with templates. We have a variety of different templates that are available for you to choose from, depending on kind of what kind of message you're wanting to create. And just to start off, we're just going to use our simple message here. Excuse me. And as it's loading over here, on our left-hand side, we have a preview of what our bulletin is going to look like. And over here on our right-hand side are all the different fields that we can edit. So it looks like we have a title, a subtitle, and a body to our message. So with that, we can simply change our fields in here and change what our title is. So here we're going to say Tightrope Media Systems. And as we type in our information into our field there, our preview is automatically going to update for us to kind of give us a real-time look at what it's going to be. So we'll go to our subtitle here, and we'll go Carousel Digital Signage. And then for our body, we can change this, and we've got this huge bulk copy of lorem ipsum placeholder text, and we'll just put in made in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Oops. There. And one of the first things you'll kind of notice is with that, because we had that huge bulk of text, now that we've got some less text in there to fill that area, it's going to adjust our font size for us automatically. for this bulletin. And so I'm going to try to fill that entire space up with as best I can with the amount of text that I have typed in there. So if I were to add just a bunch of gibberish here at the end, as you can see, as I keep going, it's going to decrease in size to fill that entire space for us. So it's going to automatically size and make sure that it looks to its best quality for you automatically. Its layout. So once we get stuff in there, the text in there that we want, we can actually change the style of our bulletin here. So we can change things like fonts, colors, different things like that. It's all done in our layout tab up here, right to the left. Excuse me. To edit any of the different fields, simply click on the field that you want to edit. So if I wanted to change my title, I simply click on our title, and it kind of highlights it. Or if I want my subtitle or my body, I can make any of those changes there. It's going to open up all of our editing abilities over here on our left-hand side. So I can do things like change our font color if I wanted to. So if I wanted a red text in there, I can do that. I can change what font I want to use. So if I wanted to use Times New Roman or something like that, whatever it may be. Choose that. I can make it bold, italics, underline. I can change my text alignment, center it, left line, right align, whatever I want to do. Add things like drop shadows, so on and so forth. Now you make all those changes to all these different sections as I want. So if you do have that basic familiarity with creating PowerPoint presentations or stuff like that, you'll have very easy to kind of pick up what you can do within Carousel. Here, excuse me 1 second. I have my window open and the eclipse appears to be starting, so it's getting darker outside.
So you must be roughly 75 or 80% where you are?
I'm not sure exactly. It might also just be that it's getting behind the clouds too, so it's getting covered that way. Yeah, I think I saw that. I think our peak was at around 1 o'clock for us. Was full eclipse. So I think we're starting to kind of get to it. I'm not sure entirely. So, anyway, so you can sit there and edit, make it the way that you want to look. So once we get everything the way that we want it, we get our text in there, we can change the style, so on and so forth. Next thing that we need to do is we need to schedule this bulletin. By default, any bulletin that you create within Carousel is going to be automatically set to always active. So what it's going to do is it's going to always be available for viewing in that specific zone. And as you can have multiple bulletins, it'll just rotate through all the available bulletins and kind of just go through and flip through all of those. Now let's say that this is a bulletin promoting event that's happening on Friday. Well, after Friday, it's no longer relevant. So instead of having to go back into the software on Saturday, delete it, or whatever it may be, we can actually set a schedule for when we want this bulletin to appear. So right underneath our schedule, we turn it to no for always active, and we can set a start and a stop time for this. So if I wanted to say that this bulletin ends on Friday, I can put our end date as Friday the 25th, and if I wanted to change what time I wanted it to be not available or expire, I can do that as well. Like if it's a 7 o'clock event, I can change this to 6:59:59, and then it won't be available anymore. It will just expire in there. We can also schedule bulletins in the future. So like let's say that this is a parade that's happening next month or something like that. We can schedule it to start on the 18th and end on the 27th or 22nd or whatever it may be. You do have that ability in there. So But by default, any bulletin that you create is always going to be set to always active. So it's always going to be in that rotation unless you tell it otherwise. So the top section is going to give you that date range of availability. Now this bottom section down here is going to tell you within that date range, what do we want it, when do we want it to appear. So let's say for an example that this is a bulletin promoting Taco Tuesday, just because it's easy. Well, we only want this bulletin to show up on Tuesdays. Well, what we can do is we can uncheck all of our other dates, some of them Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and now this bulletin is going to always be active, but it's only going to appear on Tuesdays. So you have that ability to kind of really restrict and limit when you want specific bulletins to appear at specific times. Even more so, when you say, you know what, I only want this during the lunch hour, so I can say I only want this bulletin from 11 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. or something like that. Then it will be always active, but it will only appear on Tuesdays from 11 to 1:30, so on and so forth. But again, as default, the bulletin will be set to 24/7, 365, basically, unless you tell it otherwise. So once we get our bulletin all set for schedule, we can go in and hit our publish, and we'll process our bulletin here, and after a second, our bulletin will now be published and active, and it will appear right here in our rotation of bulletins for this zone. It's going to show us all our bulletins. It's going to end up as our very last bulletin. So any new bulletin you create is always going to be at the end of the list. We can preview this bulletin if we want by clicking on the little eyeball here to get a bigger view of what it looks like. It's also going to give us information about who created the bulletin, what user account, what type of bulletin it is. It's a standard bulletin, what status it's currently at, and then also its schedule. So if you schedule the bulletin in advance or you have it set to only show up on certain days, it'll give you that information. Any questions about creating a standard template bulletin?
No, it seems pretty straightforward to me.
Yeah, it's real easy. All right, let's make one more, and let's make one that has an image with it. So here's another message. It's a simple message, but it's got a photo in it. So we can go and change our title, our subtitle, our body of our information, but we can also change out what our picture is. So instead of this little silhouetted kind of placeholder image, we can click on our little magnifying glass right here for our upload photo here. And it's going to open up all of the preloaded images that we have available for this specific zone. So we're adding in that we have all of our media library, all of our image library for this zone that we're creating. So we can use any of these preloaded ones simply by just clicking on whatever it is, and it will adjust and update it in there for us. But let's say we wanted to add our own picture. Right up here at the top, we have the ability to drag and drop images right onto this area to upload it, or we can browse our computer and we'll go through our menu structure right here. So is it okay if I use like this image right here?
Sure.
This screenshot?
Yeah. This one over here.
Alright. That's fine?
Yeah.
Yep.
Sure.
Yeah. So if I wanted to say, hey, I want to use this image, all I need to do is simply click and drag it. It'll upload it for us. And there's our bulletin.
Cool.
Or our image right into that message. So when you upload content, upload images or media or videos or whatever it may be, you can upload them from the machine that you're currently logged into the system on. So you don't have to preload anything onto the or onto the server itself and then upload it that way. You can have stuff right there on your desktop and upload it and add it to the system. So now we can go in and make an adjustments to that image as well. Let's say we wanted this image to be a little bit bigger. Well, we can also rearrange how this bulletin is laid out. So I can adjust my sizing by adjusting the positioning and the sizing of our different blocks and messages here, so I can rearrange some stuff if I wanted to. And I could make this image bigger if I wanted to. Rearrange that and position it as well. So you have that complete customization for being able to make these bulletins the way that you want them to look. So then we can go make adjustments to our content, we can set our schedule, and then lastly there's this section that we didn't touch base on the last bulletin, but it's our extra section. Now within this extra section we have the ability to adjust some additional settings for this specific bulletin. And there's some specific things that you can do in here. And we'll kind of go over just work our way from the top and on our way down. The first is it's going to ask us, is this an alert bulletin? And what an alert bulletin will do is it will be available just like any of the other bulletins in that zone, but instead of rotating through all the other bulletins, an alert bulletin will override all the other bulletins in that specific zone and only display that. As it's an alert, we want it to make sure that it's right there front and center, so it's not going to rotate through any of the other bulletins. It's going to stay on that alert bulletin. So as you can see here, it's going through our weather, and then it will go to our next bulletin, our Made in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and so on and so forth, and go on and go. Now if I made that alert bulletin, it would stay right on that image, or that bulletin, and only that bulletin, and it won't rotate in through any of the other ones. And we'll show you how to do those. We'll show you kind of what it does in a second. But it's real easy. You just change it to yes, hit publish, and it will make an alert. And we'll go over that after we explain all the other ones. Next option that we have here is it's going to ask us, should this bulletin repeat? And what that'll allow you to do is it'll let you repeat bulletins more frequently. So let's say after a while you've got 10, 15 different bulletins in a single zone that are just rotating through. Well, to see that one bulletin every time, it has to go through that full rotation of 15 bulletins to see it again. Now with things like your cablecast schedule or your hours of operation or your contact information, whatever it may be, those are some of the more important things that you might want to have display or show up more frequently. So you might want to have this be in a repeating bulletin. So you can click on yes, and you can say every 5 bulletins or every 4 bulletins or whatever it may be, I want this bulletin to be appearing. So every 5th bulletin, this one will show up, and then it will show another 5 bulletins, and it will go through and show this one again. So then that way you don't have to sit through 15 or 20 bulletins to display to see that one bulletin over and over again. Some of that more important stuff. So we'll set that back to no. Next area that we have here is it's going to ask us, do we want to let the system decide the dwell time? And that will determines how long this bulletin will appear on the screen in that zone. If you leave the system to decide, the system in our software has a real nice algorithm that it uses. Basically what it's going to do is it's going to look at the amount of text and information that's currently on that bulletin, and it's going to do its little math and say, okay, for the average person to read this amount of text, I'm going to need to display for X amount of time. At a minimum, every bulletin is going to show up for at least 10 seconds. So as you're watching your bulletin board, at a minimum, every bulletin will be up for 10 seconds. But in this case, like here, we've got this huge block of text in there. This might show now for 15 seconds or 13 seconds or whatever it may be. Where our Made in Minneapolis, real quick and easy to read, that's only going to display for 10 seconds. So the system is really good. Our little algorithm is actually pretty good about how long and how well it will display. It doesn't usually stay on any longer or too short or whatever it may be. If you did want to override that, simply click on no, and you can set your own dwell time. So if you said, no matter what, I want this bulletin to display for 20 seconds, you can set it for 20 seconds, and it will display there. Otherwise, leave it at your yes, and it will actually display. It'll stay up as long as it needs to, and that's pretty good. One of the next ones that you're going to be able to do is you can set whatever transition you want this bulletin to transition in. As we sit there and watch how our bulletins go to each other, they just fade or cross-dissolve into each other. And that's our default transition, is our fade. If we wanted to use something else, we can set that to no, and we can choose any number of our obnoxious transitions that we have available for you guys to use, like star wipes and all these other crazy different wipes and transitions that you might want to use. But at a minimum, everything's going to be a fade unless you tell it otherwise. So you can do a heart wipe if you really want to, and it will just transition as a heart wipe, and so on and so forth. In there. Last field that I'm going to talk about here is going to be our save for later. What's nice about this is, let's say you're creating a bulletin for an event that's coming up and you're waiting to get information from the event organizer. Let's say you don't have a start time or a phone number or whatever it may be. Well, instead of creating this bulletin and just putting in there as a placeholder more information to come later, or to just say, you know what, I'm just going to delete this and just build it later, we can actually put in the stuff, choose our save for later, and when I hit publish, it won't actually publish the bulletin, it will put it in a saved and waiting area, so that when we get our information for the event, we can go in, make our edits, and then publish it when we're ready. So it allows you to be able to kind of save your work and go back to it later on if you need to. So now we're going to show you kind of what a alert bulletin will do. So we're going to set that to yes. And like I said, when I hit publish, it's going to override all the other bulletins in that zone. As you can see here, it's going to go here and say this zone has active alerts, and it's going to just only show that bulletin that we have. So it highlights it in blue for us. It gives us that bulletin with a little blue sash through it to indicate it's an alert bulletin. Now if we sit and wait a second for our bulletin board here to process. Any second now. There's our bulletin, our alert bulletin. And it's going to stay on this bulletin until we turn it off, until we tell it otherwise. Now, if we were to schedule that bulletin for later, or like to expire at a certain time, that alert bulletin will be up, override all the other bulletins, and it will expire at the date and time that we choose. An example of that, like let's say some people might use this as for weather emergencies or weather warnings or something like that. You might have a tornado watch in effect until 8 o'clock tonight. Well, you might set the expiration date and time for that bulletin until 8 o'clock. Well, as it's an alert bulletin, it's going to override all those other bulletins, but when it comes to 8 o'clock, it's going to remove itself. But because we set it to always active, as the default, we're going to have to manually disable it by clicking our disable alerts. It'll show us our full list of regular bulletins that we have there, and after a second of processing, this bulletin will fade away, and we'll go back to our normal rotation of bulletins there. Any questions?
Not at this time.
Well,
All right. So let's move on and create another type of bulletin. We're going to create our uploaded bulletins. So uploaded bulletins are bulletins that we create outside of our software. So like I said, you might get a flyer from the Rotary Club or something like that for an event that they're having.
Yeah.
Instead of going in, choosing a template, and then trying to type in all that information that they have, you might convert it to a JPEG image and then just upload it as a uploaded bulletin. And that way you can save yourself some time and effort instead of copying all that stuff over. Real easy, we can go and copy and just click and drag our bulletin or image that we want over there, or we can click on the browse to upload, and it will open a browser window for us to be able to navigate our folder structure and be able to look for stuff that we want to upload in there. Now, one thing you will see, it's going to say right here, any image with a width greater than, what is that, 1380, will be resized. And what that is that's the width of the dimensions of that zone, of this community video zone here. And so what it's going to do is anything that we upload, it's going to need to stretch it and squeeze and pull and do whatever it needs to do to fill this entire zone with that image. So like in this case, it's kind of in that layout or that landscape layout, while our image here is a portrait. So if I were to upload this, drag and drop, as you can see, it kind of made it short and stocky and kind of stretched it out a little bit for us. So you just want to be very mindful when you upload, if you're doing uploaded bulletins, that they might get distorted. So try to go and make them the appropriate size before you upload them in there. As you see, right when I dropped it in there, it published it automatically for us. So it's going to be set. It's going to set the schedule automatically for that always active. Now, if I wanted to go in and say, you know what, I actually want this bulletin to expire at a certain date and time, right next to my eyeball preview, I can click on my pencil icon there, which is our edit icon. And it will allow me to edit settings for that bulletin. So I can adjust the schedule, I can make it an alert bulletin, go into our extra section and do whatever I want to in that specific zone for that bulletin. And then it will process it, and then it will be available for you again. Any questions about uploaded bulletins?
No, it seems very intuitive.
Yep. Alright, let's talk about our last type of bulletins here. We got our dynamic bulletins. Now, dynamic bulletins, like I said, are bulletins that are going to be, that we're creating outside or from an outside source. We're pointing it to a different website or whatever it may be, and it's going to create and populate and update those bulletins automatically for us. So things like RSS feeds, social media like Facebook and Twitter and Cablecast. Now, do you guys do social media like Facebook or Twitter?
YouTube.
YouTube? Okay.
Yep.
So we don't have any YouTube integration for Carousel
Yep.
currently. So, but some of the things that you might use, you might do like your Cablecast schedule. So in between your programs, how Carousel will set as your default source. Well, as people are watching, they can see what's coming up next, the upcoming schedule. So
Yeah,
we can choose our Cablecast schedule here. We can set all of our different settings for this. So we can choose what channel we want to use, being you guys have only the one channel. We can say, okay, we're going to display the schedule for channel 11. And then we can say, how much of the schedule do we want to show? Do we want to limit it by days or by pages? If we do by days, we can say, I want to show the next 2 days worth of schedule or the next 3 days worth of schedule, whatever it may be. And it's going to show 8 items per bulletin. So let's say you have 20 items per day, as an example. Well, it's going to be 1 day's worth of bulletin is going to be 3 bulletins, or 1 day's worth of schedule might be 3 bulletins because it's only going to show 8 at a time. Where here, if I go and choose pages instead of days, I'm going to say it's going to show 2 pages worth of bulletins, so it's only going to show me the next 16 things that are scheduled on my channel. So it depends on how you want it to display. A lot of people like to just choose the days worth, so then it'll show you the next 24 hours worth or 48 hours worth of programming. Down here, we can adjust how we want our date and our time to be formatted to look like. We have some pre-made kind of layouts of how we want it to look. So if I want it to be date spelled out, abbreviated month, number, whatever it may be there. Or we can customize it by using our custom, and there's a legend here for how we can use all of our different dates and times to be displayed in there. Same thing with our time. If we wanted to be with PM at the end or not, we can choose that. So that's all in our dynamic field. Now, if I wanted to change color, format, fonts, things like that, I can go over to my layout tab as well and make those changes. But what we're going to do is we're going to go to our content. And as you can see, each of these little fields here kind of have this information in there as pound, run date, and pound. Now these are what we call dynamic fields. And so we're pointing this bulletin at our cablecast schedule. Once it's at that cablecast schedule, these dynamic fields are going to tell the system, okay, look for this piece of information from that feed and populate it into this bulletin. So things like your run date, your run time, your CG title. And these are all fields and things that we can fill out in all those show records. And so when I was talking about the two different titles the other day, how we have got the title and the CG title, this is where that CG title is going to come into play. That is going to pull that CG title, that public-facing title, and populate it in there. Now we do have some other dynamic fields that you can choose from if you wanted to. And it looks like because we don't have anything scheduled currently on our channel, it's not going to populate our dynamic fields for us currently. But you can have stuff like your description, you can have producers, you can add in those different fields in there. So it's automatically going to pull in all those information for us and populate it in the schedule. With our dynamic bulletins, you're usually going to just leave them as always active just because they're going to continually update for you. You never have to update these bulletins. That they're always going to have the new information on there. So when a program ends, it'll remove itself and shift everything up and then move and show on and so forth. What you might do is you might use your repeating bulletin feature. Like I said, with your schedule, you might want to have this one show more frequently. So you might have that as a repeating. But once that's all set, we hit publish. It'll go in there. And currently, because there's nothing scheduled on our channel right now, it's going to be just sitting in there in the queue, waiting for us to schedule something onto our channel, and it will display that for us. Any questions about dynamic bulletins at all, or cable display bulletins?
No.
Now, are there any of these other ones that you kind of have interest in, like weather or like calendar feeds or anything like that?
The weather is always good.
Yeah. And a lot of the stuff is pretty self-explanatory with how we have descriptions of things. And it looks like you guys were already working on some of those bulletins in there a little bit. But real simple, in our dynamic fields, we're telling it what we want it to show. So here we can put in our zip code. What's your guys' zip code there?
04217.
Sorry, one more time?
04217.
04217. And it's going to process it. And it's going to tell us, yep, weather for Bethel. We can put in a caption here if we want. And so, like here, we can say local weather if we wanted to. Say how much of an outlook we want. Things like that. In our content, same thing. It's going to have all these different dynamic fields for us, but that are going to basically look at our feed and populate all that information in there for us. So if I were to hit publish here, you'll see it's going to process it. And after a second, there, it's going to show us our feed with what our upcoming weather is going to look like. Interesting. They haven't updated. You got two bulletin weather bulletins, and one says it's 80 and one says it's 81. It's kind of funny.
Only in Maine.
All right. Any questions about creating bulletins at all? Or
My only question is, and maybe I just missed something in the first part there, in the zones, because we've just been working with the largest part of that zone, correct?
Yep. So we've only been working in this zone. We haven't worked in any of these other zones. Now, if I wanted to create a bulletin down here in the bottom left, that one I believe is our news, is called news bulletin or news zone, where I can just go down, choose news, and then I'd be able to have a variety of other templates that are available for us that are specifically designed for that zone.
Okay.
For training, I like to use that video and messages just because it's a nice big front and center zone. There. All right. Any other questions about creating bulletins?
No.
All right. So now that we've created a bunch of bulletins, now what we need to do is we need to manage those bulletins. So that is done in our bulletins tab of our bulletin section right here. So we're still in that video and messages zone. And these are all of our bulletins that are currently available in that zone. Now each one of these bulletins that we have here has 4 action items. We've kind of already gone over a couple of them. First one is our preview, which is our little eyeball, so we can actually get a look at what it is, some information about that bulletin. We can go and sort through them by using our arrows, so we can actually see what our bulletins look like a little bit closer. Our next one is our edit, so like if I wanted to change, let's say that this bulletin's been on the screen for the last month and we just realized it's got the wrong phone number. Well, I can go in, instead of deleting it and creating a new one, I can just go in and edit, change our date and time, or phone number, whatever it may be, change the style, hit publish, and it'll process it again. Next option that we have is we have a copy button. That's what this one will be. And there's a couple different options that you can do. First option here is to duplicate. And what this will allow you to do is duplicate this bulletin in this zone. So let's say you're doing bulletins for every city council meeting that you have for the next couple months. Well, instead of creating a new one from scratch every single time, you can create the one, go in here, duplicate that bulletin, and then all you need to do is change your date and time rather than creating a new one over and over and over again. So duplicate is going to create this bulletin in this zone. Your copy option is going to allow you to make a copy of this bulletin and move it into another one of your zones. So if you wanted this copy of this bulletin down in your news section, you can check that and it will make a copy and put it in that section. Now you do want to be mindful if you do make copies or move bulletins across zones, each zone is sized differently than from each other. So if we copy this bulletin down to that news section, down here in the bottom left, it's definitely sized differently, so you might need to make some adjustments, squeeze it, do whatever it needs to fit into that zone. So just be mindful of that there will be some adjustments. Now our move will allow us to move this bulletin out of this zone and put it into a different zone. So let's say you created this bulletin, you went, oops, I forgot to change what zone I was supposed to be in. I actually want this in that news section. I can go and move this bulletin from here over to our news zone and it will remove itself from the current zone. And you can actually move and create or copy bulletins to multiple zones. So like if I wanted to copy this bulletin to both our news and our social media zone, I can make copies of it into those multiple zones. Same thing with our move. I can move it out of this zone and move it into those other two. Excuse me. Your last option for underneath the bulletin is a delete icon. Now it's a little trash can. You click on that, and it's going to give you a warning. It's going to say, "Are you sure you want to delete this bulletin?" And it's going to show us a little preview of it with either cancel or delete. Now do note, if you delete a bulletin within Carousel, it's deleted for good. There's no getting it back. So once something's deleted out of the software, it's gone forever. So just be mindful of that. I'm going to get rid of our picture just because it's probably not a great flattering picture of her with it being squished down and distorted like that. So each one of these action items is going to be on every single bulletin that you have. Now when I was creating those bulletins, I remember when I was saying it's going to create a new bulletin and it's going to end up as the very last bulletin in the list. Now let's say I wanted to rearrange the order of these. I don't want this bulletin to be at the very end. I want it to be the very first bulletin, or I want my Made in Minneapolis, Minnesota to play in front of this weather bulletin. Real easy, just click and drag that bulletin to where you want. It'll part the two bulletins apart from each other, release, and we'll move in there. So we can rearrange the order of our bulletins. So if you want the warmer weather bulletin to show up first, and then the colder weather bulletin to show up second, we can go and do that. So, it's real easy to be able to rearrange stuff. You're also going to see that we have some tabs across the top up here. And these are going to be filters on what is actually being displayed. By default, you're going to see just the active bulletins, what's currently going on in that rotation. But as you can see, we have an upcoming bulletin and we've got one that's called expired. So with our upcoming bulletin, these are bulletins that we've either scheduled in the future or basically wait in that waiting process. So because we don't have anything on our cablecast schedule for our channel, this bulletin is sitting in waiting, our cable display bulletin. So it's set up as upcoming. Once it's done, it will remove itself from the upcoming and go into our active section. Also, if you schedule that bulletin in the future, let's say it's a bulletin scheduled 2 months from now, it'll be sitting in your upcoming, waiting for that time to come, and then it will become active. Expired bulletins are going to show a couple different things. Your expired bulletins are going to be all of your bulletins that you've scheduled that have already expired, that are now in the past. They'll show up in our expired section, as well as all of any of our alert bulletins that are no longer active as alerts will show up here. And remember, when in that extra section, there's that save for later. All of your saved bulletins are going to appear in your expired section. You'll be able to re-edit any of these, go in, change your save for laters back to no. You can reschedule these bulletins, so on and so forth, and it will allow you to actually be able to reuse bulletins in the future if you want. Okay. Any questions about managing your bulletins so far?
I'm all set.
Okay.
You?
There are a
Both
couple
of
other
us.
things that you can do. We can also select multiple bulletins to perform bulk actions if we want. So if I wanted to duplicate these two bulletins or move them or delete mass number of bulletins, we can do that. We also have a select all, deselect, so on and so forth in there. Next section that we have is our templates. Now these are the templates for the bulletins in this specific zone. So these are all of our starting building blocks. They're going to have their own action items, just like as managing our bulletins. But in here, we can actually edit and manipulate these bulletins. Let's say that you guys have a specific font that you use for every single communication that you want to have put out. You have a specific style guide for your station. Well, instead of having to go in every time, create a new bulletin, change the fonts every single time you're creating a new one, well, we can edit the template to start with that specific font. So if I wanted to, I could go and edit a specific bulletin, click on that area and say, okay, I want my text or my font to be this every time that it starts. So I can go and change my font, say I want it to be this. I'm not going to hit save because I don't want to put it back. But you have that ability to kind of manipulate and edit the templates. Or let's say you're always changing the style of a specific thing. Well, you can make a copy of a specific bulletin and then change it the way that you want. Rearrange things, change fonts, colors, so on and so forth. Be careful. Same thing with bulletins. If you delete a template, it's gone. There's no getting it back. So just be very careful with that. Any questions about templates?
No.
All right. Our last section on our zone level is we have our media. So these are going to be all the media libraries for everything for content in this specific zone. So each zone is going to have their own picture library, their own video library, so on and so forth with that. So when I went and uploaded that image to that specific zone and I created this bulletin, it's now in this video and messages zone. Now, if I went to my news zone or my social media zone or whatever other zone I wanted to go to, this image is not going to be in there because I only uploaded it for that specific zone. Now, if I wanted to use that same image in other zones, instead of going to navigate to each zone and then click and dragging it, which you could do, we could also use our copy. Say, I want to make a copy of this and I want to put it in my zone or my news and my social media section, and now that picture is now available. There's a copy in there in those zones as well. So you can rearrange stuff. You can see your different background options, audio file, video files. You can put in videos if you want to have videos playing as bulletins, things like that. Same thing with all of your images. Now, when you upload stuff, it's going to be public media. It's going to be media that's available for everybody that has a user account for this specific zone or this system. Now, let's say you uploaded like a city logo or an organization logo that you only want to have access to, that you don't want to have any of the other users because you want to be able to limit how it's being used. Well, what we can do is we can make media private. So let's say with our image here, I only want to be the one to be able to use this image. I don't want anyone else to see it or have access to it. So I click on my edit pencil icon there. I'm just going to ask us, do we want to make this image item or this item private? I hit yes on there. I hit save, and now I've got a little dog ear with a red log. So now if John Doe logs in under his user account and he goes to the video and messages section and goes into my images or goes into images, he'll be able to see everything else, but because it's set as a private image, he won't be able to see this one. So it allows you to be able to kind of limit, restrict, especially if you have a lot of people in the system. Not sure that's going to be something that you guys might utilize with your system because you guys are a smaller facility, so on and so forth, but it is an option that's available for you. Any questions about media? Hearing none.
No.
Kind of keep going.
Okay.
So within Cablecast, or within Carousel, we were working on those zones. And basically, kind of what we did is we were talking about being able to create stuff individually for individual zones in there. But you do also have the ability to do some other things as well within Carousel. And over here on our left-hand side, we have a couple different zone types. We are creating bulletins, but we can also do things called crawls and full-screen alerts. Crawls are pretty self-explanatory as what they are. They are just crawls, scrolling text across the bottom. You've all seen it. So we can generate crawls for our carousel display. And what it will do is it will create its own carousel crawl zone down at the bottom. It'll push everything else up. So it doesn't actually overlay our crawls in carousel. It will actually generate its own carousel zone and have that crawl run and scroll across in that specific zone down at the bottom. If you don't have any active crawls at that time, it won't appear. It will only show up in this full screen just like what it looks like right now. Crawls are just like bulletins. We can have multiple crawls scheduled. You can schedule them to expire at certain times or play at certain times. So you could have like one bulk crawl, 1 second, and then it will go to the next, and then the next, and it'll just rotate through. There are 3 different types of crawls that you can create. First crawl is our text crawl, where you're able to type in your information saying you're watching our channel or channel 11, whatever, pay attention, stay tuned, yada, yada, yada. Or there's a snow storm, school closings, that sort of stuff. And these crawls will only appear when Carousel is up on your channel. So it's not going to be any of the crawls that you create in here are not going to scroll across programming that's playing back out of your Cablecast server.
Will the crawl go on all the?
Like
Will the crawl go on all the slides? All the bulletins.
So what it's going to do is it's going to go at the bottom of the entire channel.
Okay.
how we have our full channel display here, what it'll do is it'll just push up this entire presentation. Down here at the bottom, there will be a small crawl zone that will just have scrolling text across it. So it'll just be at the bottom of the screen, just like a normal ticker crawl.
Okay.
Just like with our bulletins, we can schedule them. Say I want it either always active, or I can actually schedule time, so on and so forth in there. The other types of crawls that we have RSS crawls, so if you want like headlines or CNN headlines scrolling across the bottom, you can do that. Or things like weather crawl, where it'll give you your weather forecast, have that scroll across the bottom. You can do a variety of different things with that. Managing your crawls is just like managing any of your other bulletins. You can rearrange the order, edit, delete, so on and so forth. Currently we don't have any active crawls, so they're not going to display any. Now the style with your crawls is done universally. Like with your bulletins, you can have one bulletin have red text and the next bulletin have purple text, and so on and so forth from there. With crawls, you basically set the style for all crawls, and every single crawl that you create is going to follow that same style. To set the style for crawls, we can go up here to our little gear to go into our settings. We'll go to configure. We're going to go to channels. We're going to select the channel that we want to edit the crawl for. So we're going to click on the edit. And over here is our crawls tab. And these are where we're going to have all of our different settings for our crawl. So we can put our crawl at the bottom. We can put it at the top. We can adjust the speed of how fast or slow it's going to scroll across. Change our font size, color, background color, and how far offset it's from the top or the bottom. So on and so forth. So we set our style with these, and every single crawl that we create is going to follow this style. Any questions about crawls?
Nope.
Alright. The last thing that we can create is full screen alerts. Now, full screen alerts are just like our alert bulletins that we were talking about, but instead of creating a bulletin or being an alert for a specific zone, our full screen alerts are going to be full screen, as the name implies. So instead of just being in that single zone like what we were showing them earlier, this entire screen is going to be filled up. So these are going to be for your real serious things, alerts that you want to get out. So like your snow emergencies, your severe weather, missing persons, amber alerts, stuff like that. It's going to act as its own zone, so we can create, manage our alerts. We have templates that we can edit, and we also have a media section for those alerts. We can go into our new alert section here, and it's going to have our templates available for us. We have some pre-made ones in here for things like lockdowns, flood warnings, emergency, just a missing person, a plain, simple message text. Excuse me. Things like road closures, whatever it may be. So here, we'll just use our emergency alert just as an example. We can edit this, change our layout style if we wanted to, change fonts, so on and so forth. We can schedule these as well, just like any other bulletin. So if this is like a snow emergency until 10 o'clock tonight, we can change and have it expire at a specific time, whatever it may be. But once we hit publish, it's going to process it here, and after a second, it's going to go here and say, yep, we currently have active alerts. We go to our preview here, and after a second of it processing, the entire screen or the entire display is going to be now this alert message rather than just being in a specific single zone. Any second now. There we go. So that's going to be for your real serious, kind of ones that you're going to want to really get people's attention in that full screen. Once you're done, click on your disable if you haven't scheduled it to expire. It'll go back to your normal rotation of bulletins, things like that. And with any alert bulletin too, you can have multiple alert bulletins. So like with these full screen alerts, Basically, what you can do is you can say severe weather warning until 10 o'clock tonight. Then the next bulletin, you can create another full screen alert that'll say, for more information, tune into the National Weather Service, or whatever it may be. Excuse me. And then it will just bounce back and forth between those two bulletins, rather than going back out to that main bulletin. So you can have multiple alerts, bulletins as well, in going on. Any questions about full screen alert bulletins?
Nope.
Alright. Any questions about any of the bulletins that I've kind of talked about or gone over, or just anything about Carousel in general?
It all makes sense. There's a lot of information at one time, so again, I'm glad I'm videotaping this so I can go look at it later.
Yeah. And two, that's the thing, is we do have some resources that are available for you as well. So if you do guys have some questions, there are stuff that you can do. First one that you have, if you have any issues or questions, is right up here in the top right corner. We have this little question mark. And what this is going to open up is we have a Carousel help site. So this is basically like a digital version of our manual with all the different topics and information about it. We have all our topics over here. If I wanted to learn about templates, all I need to do is click on that section, and it will bring me to my template section within my help site here. Another nice thing is, let's say that we're in our media section over here, and you know what? I want to get more information about media. Because I'm over here in a specific area within the software, all I need to do is click on the little question mark again, and it's going to take me to the section that I'm currently navigated to in our software.
Oh, nice.
So here, it took me to the Manage Media section. Or let's say we're in our navigating section here, and I'm like, oh, I forgot information about that. Well, there's a small question mark here, and it's going to tell us changing zones. It took me to that section. So this is a really great interactive help information for you that you can go through to be able to help you get some of those questions. So this would kind of be a nice first point of contact for any question or issues that you may have. Another thing is here, I'm going to just open up our website real quick. trms.com. Is that we do have some online resources for you available as well. So under support and Carousel support, we have some tutorials here. And these are a bunch of our YouTube videos from our YouTube website or channel, where it's going to give you information about videos about navigation and vocabulary, how to create bulletins, how to manage your bulletins, media management, so on and so forth in there. And these are great resources for you to be able to kind of watch and be able to see how can I do certain specific things if you want to look over that information as well. And we do have these set as a playlist on our website, or on our, on our Carousel channel, or not our Carousel, on our YouTube channel. There is a playlist with all the Carousel tutorials in it. So it'll just play through in this order, or you can just simply click on the one that you want to watch. If you do start doing stuff and you do have some questions and you can't find the answers in any of those places, you can always submit a support ticket with our support department from our website right here, where it'll allow you to create a ticket, put in all your information, put in your description of what your issue is, and then they'll be able to answer that. Someone will be in contact with you. Support for our products is free of charge for the life of our product for our customers. So don't worry about asking us any questions. Don't hesitate on reaching out to us, because that's what we're here for. We want to make our customers make sure that they have the best experience and are able to be successful with our products. So don't hesitate to reach out to us.
That's good to know. Yep.
Yeah. Any questions about anything I've kind of gone over today?
It seems real intuitive to work with. Having used other programs that have the same type of options, I think we should be able to adapt quite well once we get into it.
Yeah. And yeah, absolutely. And with anything, it's gonna just the more you use it, the easier it's gonna get, and the more familiar you're gonna get with the software. Basically, what I would suggest as kind of the next steps for you guys is go to each of the zones that you guys have and start creating stuff in them, and just basically start adding your stuff to make this carousel channel your own. So putting in logos, putting in your own bulletins, putting in information, contact, hours of operation, stuff like that.
Yep.
And just kind of start playing with it. So.
All right.
Well, if there's no other questions, basically, we're all set.
Okay, well, Ryan, thank you very much.
I think I'm all set.
Yeah,
actually.
not a problem at all. Hopefully, yeah, like with anything, like I said last week, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Don't hesitate to reach out to any of us with any questions that you have whatsoever. Or if anything, reach out to Randy, and Randy can kind of get in contact with me as well.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Now, would we contact you at this same number?
No, this is my this is my conference line.
Yep.
This is the line that I do for use for trainings.
Yep.
Email is probably the best number to get a hold of me.
Yep.
But that main number that's in there, my direct extension to my desk is 239 instead of that 505.
Okay.
239?
239 is my direct extension.
Right.